Jesus, boys, girls in between us, what's going on? Red Gambit here, joined by the lovely and effervescent and sparkly Nairman. How are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well. How about you?
I am just peachy because it is the post-E3 week. We have things to talk about. It's been so long since we had something to talk about. I was like a dying man crawling through the desert searching for a drop of water, and I got a tsunami instead.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like after E3, considering it's kind of barren this time of year in terms of releases and news.
Yeah, it is the famous summer games drought, and it's just been so freaking great that we finally had E3 and we finally got so many things to talk about. And it's kind of funny because last week we were talking about E3 and we said like the last one had been kind of lackluster and whatnot. We were really hoping for a better E3 this year, and I think they completely delivered. I thought this year's E3 was probably one of the best in quite a while. What was your initial overall impression of the show itself?
Personally, I think that the presentations of the games were really, really bad overall, but the games themselves looked really, really good. Yeah,
I mean, there's certainly some things we'll get into discussing that, and even things that we won't get into discussing that. I mean, I have no fucks to give about a series like Uncharted, but obviously that made a bit of a wave when the presentation for that didn't work at all. So there's certainly some things like that went on at the show. But yeah, I mean, you know, this is our post E3 discussion. We won't have time to cover every game that was obviously released at the show or announced at the show, because there's just so much going on there. So we're really going to keep this just kind of tight, kind of focused on the 6 or 7 games that we really felt personally stood out to us at the show. So that's kind of the format that we're going with this week. So first and foremost, as always, we're going to talk about my favorite game of the show. We're going to talk about Street Fighter V. So you saw this at the show. You saw they released 2 new characters at the show. They released both Cammy and Birdie. Any thoughts on this that have developed since the last time we spoke about the game for you, Nairman?
Apparently Chun-Li's boobs are a glitch now.
Is that a fact? I haven't actually heard that.
Apparently the massive overly jiggle with Chun-Li was a glitch according to Capcom, but that's just what I heard. Overall, it still looks really good. I'm happy to see it in action, see some more characters. I just hope that the roster is plenty big enough, considering the roster as we stand is still kind of small.
Anyone who knows me and my fascination with boobs will be able to tell you that excess jiggle is not a bug, it is a feature.
Yeah, I guess for you it's more of a feature than a bug.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. Yeah, the roster is still very small. This is the first public build of the game that they actually showed off, that they allowed the public to actually access and play at the show. And yeah, I mean, I didn't make a character breakdown video for Cammy or Birdie, kind of because there wasn't really much of an official trailer for them. Like, you know, Bison got an entire trailer to himself, whereas kind of like in a weird choice, Cammy and Birdie got like half a trailer. Split up between them, which kind of amounts to a quarter, because like, it was only a 3-minute trailer, and the first like minute and a half was actually just footage of existing characters, and then finally in the second minute and a half, they actually showed you Cammy and Birdie, and it was split up between them. So there wasn't really a whole lot of footage there, and I could have scoured through match footage if I wanted to, but honestly, I do like Cammy. Cammy's not my favorite character. I do like the way they've changed her design. They've just tweaked it a little bit. Again, going back to boobs, her boobs have gotten bigger. Other things like the webbing that she wears, and just little tweaks to how her actual appearance looks. I'm fine with that. That's interesting. I'm actually pretty interested to play her when the public beta comes out next month, which is another thing that they announced. But like, Birdie is a character I just really have no fucks to give about. I've never been a big fan of like the kind of joke characters they have in Street Fighter games. Characters like Rufus. That sort of thing, where they just have characters that just look intentionally goofy, and Birdie certainly falls in that category for me. So that's why I kind of thought, yeah, we can discuss it here rather than actually making a breakdown video.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm just looking for kind of the mainstays, a few new characters, and just want to see kind of what the initial roster will be, considering we know for a fact that there's going to be a Super Street Fighter V or an Ultra Street Fighter V Turbo HD Championship, yada 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 remix. So I'm just kind of interested to see kind of what their plan is for the initial release and going forward, rather than kind of the development of it, but that's just more my thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I've said before, you know, I'm just waiting for the characters. At this stage, I'm thinking I'll probably main Cammy. She was my original character in Street Fighter 4 before I switched around to Juri. I'm not like the world's biggest Cammy fan, but I do like the way that she plays. Obviously, like I am still hanging out for either Juri, Yun, or Yang to be announced in the game, and if Juri gets announced, I will make a reaction video to that. I can guarantee it. But yeah, I'm definitely just hanging out for more news and what's going to be happening, and obviously. Between now and when the game gets released, there's going to be a lot of rebalances and tweaks to the game, things like that. So it's still very early days at the moment. So overall, looks great. Really, excited in the direction that it's going. They're going for a direction which is more aggressive, more focused on being able to deal damage and things like that. I think as a result of the debacle that rose out of Street Fighter Cross Tekken, which was a game which had very low damage output and a lot of ways to recover damage, which led to very long, drawn out, and not very exciting matches. So I think they've learned their lesson from that and are now moving to a much more fast and damage-based format for Street Fighter V.
Okay, I basically play more aggressively versus defensively, so anything that rewards that a bit is more my sort of speed. That's why I tend to lose my friend John over at Brain Scratch a lot in Smash Bros. Because he's better at playing defensively or a longer range game than I am. So ultimately, I think this is going to feel a little bit more my speed versus, say, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, where you mentioned that it's much more defensive oriented than it was before.
Yeah, it wasn't so much a defensive-oriented game. It was just they made the damage output just way too low, and the fact that when your character was tagged out, they could actually recover a portion of their life, which led to, in the initial release, led to a lot of games actually ending in timeouts, which obviously was like the opposite of like what you want when you're creating a spectator sport. They did try to correct it in the 2013 patch, but unfortunately by then it was just way too little too late, and the game pretty much died off from there. So that's obviously a situation that they're going to be very keen to avoid happening again.
Oh, definitely. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. I'm more interested in the roster more than anything else, considering I'm not that big in Street Fighter's specific game mechanics. So as long as it plays like Street Fighter, I'll probably be okay with it.
Alright, cool. Moving on from Street Fighter V, we've got your biggest game of the show, I believe, which is Star Fox Zero. I'm going to be totally honest and say I know very little about Star Fox. My knowledge extends to the fact that you should probably do a barrel roll at some point.
Yeah, everyone knows kind of the memes from Star Fox 64. I was excited about this considering this is kind of one of Nintendo's forgotten franchises at this point, along with F-Zero and to an extent Metroid. It's just nice to see it back, playing more like a Star Fox game, considering the last number of Star Fox games besides the 64 remake have been wildly different and wildly kind of handled by different developers. So it's nice to see a Nintendo/Platinum made Star Fox game that plays like a real Star Fox game. That's kind of why I'm excited for it. Ultimately, it's nothing too terribly different. It's using a lot of ideas from the unreleased Star Fox 2 for the Super Nintendo. So it's just a good-looking Star Fox game, which at this point I'd be happy with.
Okay, so the game is actually being co-developed by Platinum, or is it being developed completely by Platinum? Is that what you were saying there?
Nintendo's been a bit coy as to how much Platinum had, but I believe they worked with Platinum for the majority of the game.
Okay, that's very interesting to me, since they're working on the newly announced Transformers game as well. Their profile is certainly rising quite a bit recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, most certainly has, especially with the working with Nintendo so much between Bayonetta 2 and now Star Fox. It was kind of funny considering everyone was like, hey, you made a good Star Fox demo with the Bayonetta Star Fox stuff, so just do that with Star Fox, and it seems that they're doing that.
Maybe that was their plan all along.
Quite possibly. Yeah, I mean, it's not really a reboot or a sequel either, which is why the name's kind of misleading, but, it looks like a fun enough shooter game, so I'm looking forward to it. It'll be interesting to see how it comes out, considering they said there's going to be no real multiplayer kind of component to it. They're focusing mostly on the single-player experience, which is kind of weird for Nintendo, considering they're known as the high kind of multiplayer-friendly sort of company, where everything nowadays has to have a multiplayer function in the Mario stuff that everyone tries to copy now.
Yeah, but that said, I mean, they're mostly into, like, local multiplayer with your friends. They're not really big on online multiplayer, especially when it comes to being competitive, because, they don't shy away from multiplayer by any stretch of the imagination, but they want that multiplayer to be fun. They want it to be friendly. They want it to be no teabagging. They want it to be no smack talk or anything like that. So, them shying away from a shooting game that has multiplayer does not really surprise me, I have to say.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense from that perspective, although they did release Splatoon earlier, which is a much more kind of third-person shooter versus Star Fox, which is more of an aerial shooter, so I'm not sure in multiplayer how much kind of edge you would get with a Star Fox game compared to something like Splatoon, but I guess we won't be seeing it this time around.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I have played Splatoon. Obviously, there are videos on the channel, and you've played Splatoon as well. And I mean, that's obviously like a super, kid-friendly game, which is oddly played by adults mostly. But it has that dimension to it. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Obviously, Star Fox isn't as cute. So I mean, what Nintendo's threshold is for making games that are mean or competitive or anything else, I don't know, but I think it's pretty low. But moving away from that, what really has you excited about a new Star Fox game? What are you really looking forward to?
There's high action aerial combat mostly. They showed a lot of new vehicles and new transformations of vehicles, which is new to the franchise. But I'm just looking forward to fun on rails shooter action with a lot of fun characters and admittedly a lot of kind of corny lines, considering they're bringing back the old voice cast from 64 again, and they're basically trying to make it basically in tone of Star Fox 64, which generally is nothing but good things considering Star Fox 64 is one of my favorite Nintendo games.
Fair enough. Alright, moving on from Star Fox Zero, we've got Mirror's Edge 2/Mirror's Edge Catalyst. The game finally got a new trailer at the show, which really excites me because we didn't see it at all last year. It was announced 2 years ago, and its absence last year kind of led to speculation that the game had been cancelled, and they had to reaffirm that it wasn't, and whatnot. And now we finally got not only a brand new trailer for the game, which shows off a lot more gameplay than what we saw in the first one, but also has a release date attached to it. So, did you see this trailer, and did you have any thoughts in particular?
Yeah, I saw the trailer. Generally it looked good, but I was kind of disappointed that they didn't show more of it. They kind of just did a little bit of free running, talked a little bit about how the game was set up, and then just kind of ended it, which made me a bit confused considering this was supposed to be one of the big games EA was supposed to be pushing this year, compared to during the presentation, which was like 75% sports, which was very annoying generally.
It's EA's time to sports. Get your gear on with the Ballmaster, chasing it down the field for points.
Yeah, pretty much, but ultimately I was slightly disappointed that they didn't show more actual gameplay. They kind of just showed a little bit of stuff and then quietly kind of shoot it off stage, but ultimately I'm still excited for the game. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and as long as they learn lessons from the first game, I will probably be happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no secret that that the game is not really one that EA is pushing too hard. I'm not really surprised that they didn't give it more of a presence at the show. I think that it's mostly, we've talked about this before in the last podcast especially. We talked about how it was like something that was driven largely by the fans of the original game, and how I think it's like really, I don't want to use the term passion project because obviously it still had a lot of money thrown at it, but I don't think, I think that EA would probably be expecting the game to, perform hopefully decently, but I don't think they have really stratospheric expectations for it, is kind of the impression that I got.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm focusing on as well, that ultimately this seems like it's going to be a smaller game compared to other ones, but I wouldn't call it a passion project either, if only because it's EA. They expect things to do well regardless of whether or not it's a small game or not, which is kind of a weird thing considering they put it up there with their sports releases in terms of probable expectations, which is kind of unfair to Mirror's Edge on that point. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those surprises that they didn't show more of it, considering it was really the game everyone was looking forward to besides Battlefront from EA, and they just spent it so much more on other things that no one really cared about, so that was kind of disappointing for me.
Yeah, I guess what I kind of liked about the trailer itself was that it showed a decent chunk of gameplay. It also showed a lot of in-game cutscenes and whatnot, which would normally sort of turn people off, which I get the feeling it did for you as well. But for me, I was actually kind of pleased by that because, as we talked about again before, the game, probably the weakest part of the original game was the fact that, like, between the levels themselves, it had a very weak storytelling narrative. It had that very those Samurai Jack-esque animated cutscenes, which didn't really suit the tone of the game, in my opinion, and it kind of led to the game feeling like it was just a bunch of random levels kind of strung together by these weak cinematics. So, the idea that we get to see these scenes, in the full in-game engine, kind of like, it gives me a little bit of hope, not just for the fact that there is the more production value going into the game this time, but maybe we'll get to do stuff like just a little bit of stuff that isn't involved in running. I always love being able to do like little RPG-esque kind of things, like just being able to go and talk to people and stuff like that, or just not spend the entire fucking game running everywhere. I mean, yes, that's what you get a Mirror's Edge game for, but you don't have to do it all the time. So I don't expect them to do that, but I'm just saying it would be kind of nice if you had that option there.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to see. They said it was more open world in terms of going around and finding missions and such. So hopefully we'll be able to interact with other runners maybe while they're just kind of doing their thing in the overworld or whatnot. So, you know, we have yet to see kind of what the main meat of the gameplay is going to be like compared to Mirror's Edge at least. So that was kind of my disappointment. I did like the way the cinematics looked. Don't get me wrong, that looks nice and all, but I just kind of wanted to see more gameplay to see what they had changed or what they had learned from. So I guess they're kind of keeping that tightly under wraps until further notice.
Yeah, on a final point, did you notice a little shot that DICE took at EA that the game's villain has this very strong resemblance to the current CEO of EA?
No, what did he say?
No, he hasn't said anything. It's just the fact that a lot of people, after watching the trailer, actually pointed out that the bad guy in the game has a very strong physical resemblance to the man who is the CEO of EA at the moment, which is probably not a coincidence.
Yeah, that sounds pretty funny on that part. Yeah, I did actually see a photo of that, and it kind of made me chuckle a little bit, but then I completely forgot about it.
Fair enough. Okay, moving on from there, we have the announcement of Mario and Luigi Paper Jam. Again, I gotta confess, not really big on the Mario games, so why don't you tell me what the hell is going on in that?
Basically, the Mario and Luigi RPG series is now crossing over with the Paper Mario RPG series, so we will now have regular Mario and Paper Mario running around with regular Bowser and Paper Bowser. So it's going to be a clusterfuck of game styles, and it looks fun as hell.
So we now have a crossover of a spin-off, is what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. We have a crossover between two RPG series, which have all the same characters, same locales, all that stuff. Just one's flat and one's not.
Okay, so what's got you excited about this? What's interesting about this particular mashup and clusterfuck of game styles that is appealing to you?
Basically, I'm looking forward to. I really like both the Mario, Luigi, and the Paper Mario series, so I'm looking forward to see what they could do to bring both of them together, considering they both have very unique game styles. Paper Mario is very much more traditional RPG, while Mario and Luigi is very much more active RPG sort of thing. So it's just interesting. It'll be interesting to see kind of what they bring from both elements to this game. And, you know, all the Mario RPGs always have great storytelling besides Sticker Star. So seeing these characters interact with their paper selves and doing all this crazy hijinks in the Mushroom Kingdom will always be a good time, at least looking forward to it for me.
Okay, so it might be kind of like the Mario 64 sort of style of being, you know, a platformer slash RPG, well, platformer slash action slash sort of RPG, where you have that option to move around freely in the world before going into levels and whatnot. That's kind of what we're aiming for here.
Yeah, that was definitely a big gameplay between Super Mario RPG and we kind of brought it into the Mario and Luigi series. So it's definitely a more actiony RPG compared to other ones. So while keeping the kind of traditional RPG, the Paper Mario games sort of do a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what they kind of do and what kind of crazy shenanigans the plumbers and their paper cells can get into.
Okay, is there any particular, do they have a release date on that, or is it still just kind of up in the air at the moment?
I believe it's coming out early next year.
Okay, cool. Well, that's also the same for Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Oddly enough, it's coming out in January next year, so just after the holiday period. So that's pretty cool for both games.
Yep, definitely. I like me some spring games because everything doesn't need to be punched up in the holiday season.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be that absolute mad rush before the holiday season. Absolutely. Actually, another I'm gonna move on. Let's talk about Mass Effect Andromeda. We finally got a trailer for the new Mass Effect. Everyone knew it was coming. BioWare have made no secret of the fact that they have been working on it for some time, but we finally got a trailer for it, albeit it was a CG one. Did you happen to see the trailer?
Yeah, I was watching the EA presentation, and the country music completely threw me off.
It was so weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense whatsoever, especially compared to other Mass Effect tunes or trailers and whatnot, so I was left kind of confused, but, you know, ultimately it's a Mass Effect game, so I kind of know what to expect to some degree.
It was, like, I was so excited for, like, a new Mass Effect trailer, and I fired it up, and I'm just like, I have the weirdest boner right now. My erection does not know what to think for this game.
So, kind of what are your expectations for this game going forward, considering we only got a kind of basic CG trailer? It's probably going to be a long ways off at this point.
Yeah, well, that's kind of been the problem that, like, the first trailer for Mass Effect games, since Mass Effect 2, I don't know if I did Mass Effect 1, I didn't really follow Mass Effect 1 up until right before it came out, because, it was only, like, right before it came out that I found out you can make your own character rather than just having the really bland-looking Shepard they always used for the first 3 games. But definitely for Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, the first trailer was always CG, so it didn't really give you a huge idea of what the game was going to be about, and especially in this trailer, it didn't even show you what the main protagonist was going to look like, or what the squad mates were going to look like, or anything. You just got to see a figure wearing armor that had an N7 logo on it, and that was kind of it. And there were those kind of like weird cowboy, Old West-esque kind of scenes where you're moving around this very Old West kind of environment with a Mako-esque kind of esque vehicle and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, again, I kind of wished I just didn't really know what to think. So, yay, new Mass Effect, but really, I get what they're going for. I get that there was some person in marketing who just went, hey, you know what would be really cool if we set up a juxtaposition between sci-fi and the Old West. It'll be fucking crazy. And everyone there obviously loved it, and everyone who, everyone who was not working for BioWare was obviously not feeling it at the same time. So, I don't. Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed by the trailer, but at the same time, still excited for new Mass Effect. So there you go. Again, confused.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it, if only because they kind of ended the trilogy last time. So I'm curious after what Halo kind of did, what they'll be doing with the characters in the universe and whatnot. So you'll kind of have to let me know how that is when it comes out.
Yeah, well, they're not. The good news is that from what I know, which is very little because they haven't given away very much at all about the Mass Effect. I may have mentioned this last time that they're not going to pull a Halo and just have the continuing adventures of the Master Chief in a new setting. That they've said on the record that Shepard is done, that this is going to be a new protagonist. So it'll hopefully be a whole new story arc within the Mass Effect series without having to rely on Shepard, because Shepard was just a name. Shepard was like, obviously Shepard was built up to be a legend, but at the end of the day, Shepard was still just a name for you being able to insert yourself into the story. So I don't think changing it to a new person, a Bob or a Steve or whatever, is going to make a whole lot of difference in terms of how the game plays or being able to build that legacy up again.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that, but that's good that they're not kind of reusing the same characters for every little thing, kind of like what they did with Halo. So I'll be interested to see what they do. Mass Effect really isn't totally my game, but I'll keep an eye on it just to kind of see what changes they make compared to previous entries.
Yeah, that said, the caveat to that is that BioWare have definitely lied or at least changed their mind about Mass Effect before. I remember them saying when Mass Effect 2 was being released, and they was like, really selling the fact that your decisions had these huge impacts on the game. They went out of their way to really mention the fact that if you play the game badly, Shepard can die at the end of it, and it'll be a whole new character that you get to play in Mass Effect 3 if Shepard died at the end of Mass Effect 2, which clearly did not turn out to be the case in Mass Effect 3. So you gotta take what they say with a grain of salt as well.
Yeah, completely understandable. We'll probably get more details probably next year, but ultimately, neat looking trailer, weird choice of music.
Yes, very much so. Good way to sum things up, which is going to lead us into our next game, which is Metroid Prime Federation Forces, which is a Metroid game that is not being developed by Team Ninja, which can only be a good thing.
Except that it is nothing to do with Samus, it has nothing to do with exploration. It is basically a 3 or 4 player team-based shooter on the Nintendo 3DS, where you're playing the role of a Federation Force grunt going around doing stuff, and it looks nothing like a Metroid game whatsoever, so a lot of people are peeved.
It's the Halo ODST syndrome.
Yeah, pretty much. It's Halo ODST, so yeah, it's a bunch of characters we don't care about doing a whole bunch of things we don't care about in the game most people really don't seem to care too much about. I mean, if you go look at the video on Nintendo's YouTube channel where it's the revealed trailer, it is like 90-something% dislikes. It is just kind of astounding on how badly this game has been revealed.
Okay. Well, that kind of sucks. So what really what led them to this decision, do you think? What inspired them to engender so much hate from their fans?
It's hard to say, really, considering they spent not a lot of time talking about it. They kind of just said, oh, it's Metroid Prime Federation Forces, it's a team-based shooter where you do stuff and that's about it. It's mostly just due to the fact that it has nothing to do with Metroid at all, at least from the looks of it. It has none of the same gameplay, it has none of the same kind of tropes or ideas going into it. It just seems like a very kind of bland-looking third-person shooter that they decided to slap the Metroid Prime logo on, and that's kind of rubbing people the wrong way, considering we haven't gotten a good Metroid game in a good long time, so it's just kind of rubbing people the wrong way. If they had announced a regular Metroid game in addition to this, I don't think people would care so much, but this on its own doesn't look interesting at all, and that's kind of why people are upset.
Do you think this is their response to looking at like the growth of team-based shooters and things like Team Fortress and Counter-Strike, and just basically seeing that and going, well, that looks pretty easy to make, you know, we don't have to worry about like AI for, you know, for shit, or, you know, like huge like overarching stories or anything like that. We can just make a team-based shooter and let people go nuts.
That wouldn't surprise me. Nintendo's never been too terribly interested in the shooter, but with the popularity of Splatoon, I wouldn't be surprised if this was kind of a reaction to Splatoon's rise to popularity and the other kind of, not say super gory or hyper realistic team-based shooters like Call of Duty, but like those Team Fortress 2's ones or things like that. So I think this is kind of a response to those, but it's kind of the wrong way to do it, considering Metroid is one of their most, I don't want to say well-known, but definitely most prized in terms of quality besides other franchises. So it just seems like a really weird decision on their part to go this route.
Do you think there's a chance that this was kind of, yeah, there's a long-standing history of games that have been developed within the industry where people have just been like trying to develop a new IP, and then like a producer will just walk by someone's desk one day and go, you know what, this game would sell a whole lot more if we just slapped a different license on it.
Yeah, that's unfortunately what this looks like. It looks like someone wanted to do their own thing, and they decided, hey, this looks kind of like this other franchise we have. Let's just slap the franchise that we already have on there, and it'll sell lots better, which is what Nintendo did to Dinosaur Planet, which was originally on the N64, but later made on the GameCube, which became Star Fox Adventures, and everyone was like, what? With that?
Yeah, it's also exactly the same thing that happened to Silent Hill 4: The Room, which was not a Silent Hill game before they decided that it totally would be halfway through.
Yeah, so it just seems like a game that they said, okay, let's just slap the Metroid name on there and hopefully it'll sell well, and people will notice that it has nothing to do with Metroid at all, at least from the initial looks.
Fair enough, so you have exactly 0 fucks to give about this game?
Pretty much. I was not pleased with the way it looked. It looked very kind of dull and uninteresting, and I don't like how they're kind of using the Metroid name to try and sell something that clearly, at least initially, had very little, if anything, to do with Metroid.
Alright, well, let's talk about, well, let's go to what is probably the biggest game of, well, for a lot of people of the show itself, and that was Square Enix has finally hit the, they broke the glass, they hit the in case of financial emergency remake Final Fantasy VII button, and it's been confirmed that it is happening. Finally, after all these years, after, you know, the decades upon decades of fans bitching endlessly about the need for a remake, they finally caved in. What was your first thoughts when you heard this and saw the trailer?
I was utterly shocked, considering they have ported the game to basically everything, and they're porting it to the PS4, they're porting it to the PC, they ported it to the PC on Steam, and they basically vehemently said over and over again that they're not going to do it to just come out this year, kind of out of nowhere, and say, okay, we're making Final Fantasy VII, here's this awesome looking trailer, here you go, coming probably in a number of years.
Yes, well, given the development cycle that was Final Fantasy 13 Versus, and then now Final Fantasy 15, yeah, it could be quite a while before any of the fans finally get to see that.
Yeah, but I mean, the groundwork is probably already there, considering it's a remake versus a brand new game, so they probably have the foundations done, at least in terms of story, characters, locales, all that sort of thing, so now they just have to kind of make the game, so I imagine it won't take too terribly long compared to other Final Fantasies being made currently, but I expect it to come out sometime in 2017 for the 20th anniversary of the game, and god, it's been 20 years since Final Fantasy VII first came out.
Alright, so before we go into more specifics about it, I mean, I think we may have talked about this before, but just for the people who haven't heard, what are your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII as a game in general? Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it. We have talked before about how everyone has the syndrome of your first Final Fantasy is your favorite Final Fantasy, and for me, I actually played Final Fantasy VIII before I played Final Fantasy VII, so Final Fantasy VIII is most definitely my favorite Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VII is not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, but I didn't like the I didn't like the way that it went from like chibi style characters in game to these very serious non-chibi characters and cutscenes, things like that. I didn't like, you know, I'm going to spoil a game that's 20 years old, so I think there is an expiration date on spoilers. I didn't like the whole turnaround 2/3 of the way through the story where it's like Cloud's like, I'm a soldier, I'm a soldier, I'm a soldier. Oh wait, no, I'm not a soldier. I made that up. Yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't, you know, I didn't like a lot of, like, the music in a lot of places, especially Cosmo Canyon, just drove me fucking nuts. So, I'm not against a Final Fantasy remake. I think Final Fantasy Advent Children is a great fucking movie, which I've watched many times over. So, you know, if it's in that kind of vein, I'm all for a Final Fantasy VII remake, but I just don't have that huge nostalgia boner that a lot of people do have for the game.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I mean, my first Final Fantasy was 9, so obviously that one's my favorite, but... You know, 7's a good game, but the fan brats whine way too loudly that it is the bestest RPG ever when, by most fans of the series and going on Metacritic and the like, it's not even the best Final Fantasy on the system that it's on, which actually belongs to 9, actually. But, you know, it's a good game. It's overrated as all hell, considering every fan of Fantasy 7 likes to claim Cloud and Sephiroth are the bestest characters ever, but... You know, I'm looking forward to it. It's a good game. I'm wondering what they could kind of tweak and change a little bit to make it a little bit more modern. I'm interested in seeing what the characters and locales will look like on fantastic PS4 technology compared to others. But most importantly, it leads me to get excited for other remakes of games in the franchise, because Nomura stated that he wants to remake 5 and 6 now, and since 7 now has a remake coming along, that leads hope to 8 and 9 getting remakes as well, which are also on the PS1.
Yeah, true, and that'd be great. There was a Final Fantasy VII, actually wasn't, sorry, there's a Final Fantasy VIII remake which was actually in development for the PS2, but when the Final Fantasy Spirits Within movie bombed and cost them a shit ton of money, they actually abandoned that.
Oh really? I never heard anything about that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I've actually, if you dig around on the interwebs, I might be able to find some of them for this video. There were a couple of very low-resolution screenshots that made their way to IGN at the time of like tech demos for the remake for the ballroom scene from 8. But yeah, that movie pretty much killed it off right away, because that movie, for people who don't know, that movie actually bombed so hard that it actually resulted in Sony having swooping in and buying up a lot of Square's stock to basically bail them out of that, and which is the reason why Final Fantasies, pretty much from that point forward, were a Sony exclusive for a very long time.
Oh, that makes sense. But yeah, I heard that movie was a complete bomb at least, so I knew that going in. Basically, other question that I have going in for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, kind of what were your reactions when you first heard about this? Because we heard my reactions. What were your reactions to the announcement of Final Fantasy VII? Just kind of utter shock or confusion or what?
Mine was more cynicism than anything else, because as I kind of mentioned in the intro, I think that I think this is basically like, we've known for a long time that Square hasn't been hugely profitable, that a lot of their games don't sell, they either don't sell that well, or they've had the problem of like Final Fantasy XIV, where it was just so ridiculously buggy that they've obviously had to spend a lot of money trying to get it fixed and things like that. So I think this is kind of like, you know, pressure from the shareholders and whatnot, basically saying, you know, we want you to release something which is going to make a lot of fucking money. And they're, you know, this has been, you know, the one thing they've been holding off for so long, because, you know, think of it from a logical standpoint. It's been 20 years, or almost 20 years, since Final Fantasy VII was released. And this entire time, you know, the fanboys have been saying, we want a remake, we want a remake, we want a remake, because they're so nostalgic. They've got such rose-colored glasses that they can't see anything else but pink when it comes to Final Fantasy VII. So Square know that it doesn't matter how good the remake is going to be. When it gets released, the first thing that everyone's going to say is it's not as good as the original. And they know that, and that's why they haven't been doing it. That's why they've done everything but a fucking remake up until this point. So I think this kind of smacks a little bit of desperation on their part to get, you know, it'll sell shit tons, there's no question about that. It'll be hugely popular, again, no question. But they know what the reaction from fans is going to be, no matter how good it is.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well, at least in terms of the quality of the game, that ultimately it's not going to compare to the first one. It never will, considering a lot of people play these as their when they were kids or teenagers or so. So looking back, it's always going to be better than it probably is. I'm just curious as to what they'll actually change for the game, because at least they said they're going to keep their more lighthearted elements in it, but you know, I'm just curious as to what gameplay changes they're going to make. I hope they keep it, you know, turn-based. They keep the foundation there. It's more of what little differences are we going to see, kind of what are you going to do to try and make it better versus doing a straight up remake from the PS1 game.
I can tell you one thing which I guarantee will not make it into the game from the original.
What's that?
The scene where Cloud has to cross-dress as a woman and make it into the burlesque/brothel.
Oh, they better fucking keep that in. And as an added joke, when he cross-dresses, make him look exactly like Lightning.
That, the funny thing is that, like, I actually always thought Lightning actually always kind of looked more like Squall than Cloud, but either way, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, they did say they would try to keep the more lighthearted elements. They will do their best to keep everything at least tonally the same, so I'm hoping that they keep the more lighthearted and comedic, and to an extent somewhat out there elements in the game.
If they actually did that and actually did make him look like Lightning of that part of the game, I would give it 10 out of 10 automatically. That would just be the best in-joke ever.
Yeah, it definitely would. I hope they go that route, considering Lightning basically was admitted to be female Cloud to try and be popular.
Did they actually admit that? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, they basically admitted that Lightning, basically from a design standpoint, was, from the drawing board, basically a female Cloud.
I guess, like, in hindsight, that actually is very true because she does have like that she was in the military to start with, same as Cloud. She did go against against the people that she was working for very early on, that kind of thing, and she does have that very kind of stoic personality. I guess I kind of made more of like the link to Squall because she has like she has that gun that turns into a sword kind of thing. So that was my link, I guess. But yeah, I can see how that would work.
Yeah, but ultimately, it's a remake. I don't think they'll be changing too much. Just kind of bringing it back to the 7 remake topic. What little changes would you like to see be done versus making it a straight-up remake?
Not too much. I mean, like, I didn't really have too much of a problem with the battle system. I'm fine with the ATB kind of battle system. I wasn't really huge on like the materia socketing system. But, that was just, again, I played it right after I played Final Fantasy VIII, so I kind of was like, oh, why isn't this game more like 8? But like, in hindsight, like, the draw system in Final Fantasy VIII is fucking terrible, so maybe, the soccer system works a lot better than I remember it, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I like 7 more than 8, so not to burst your bubble on anything, but one thing I really want them to change is cut down the materia grinding and the junction system for that. Just make it a little bit easier to understand, make it easier to get what you want, considering it's an RPG. If you want something bad enough, you're going to grind for it. Just cut out the middleman, make it easier to get it, so on and so forth.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to really add on that. We obviously will just wait to see what's going to happen with that. Like I said, it'll sell shit tons, it'll make them a lot of money, it'll make their shareholders happy. There'll be shit tons of merchandising and spin-offs and DLC, all kinds of shit like that. But yeah, I just think that, as I said, it has that air of desperation to it, which is kind of a little bit disappointing, but that's me.
Yeah, definitely. There's a reason we make the, in case of financial difficulties, Final Fantasy VII Remake button, but yeah, I think that's about everything we have to say about the 7 Remake, considering all they did was show a CG trailer with not much to actually be seen in it.
Yeah. Going back, just out of curiosity, because this has actually piqued my interest just a little bit, going back to the Lightning Cloud thing, for just a moment, what do you think it says about either the game or the fans that Cloud is probably, like, is either the most popular character in the entire series, or one of easily the most popular characters in the entire series, whereas Lightning is actually one of the most hated characters in the entire series?
I have no idea what to make of that. I think that has more to do with the game rather than the characters themselves. Maybe a little bit of production values as well, considering I know a lot of the side characters for 13 are also not very well liked, so I think that has more to do with the game they were in, whereas if Lightning was in, say, Final Fantasy VII and Cloud was in Final Fantasy 13, I think it would be the exact same way.
Fair enough. Alright, well, we can speculate on that a lot. I will agree that like a lot of the side characters in Final Fantasy 13 are very annoying, especially like the little kid, like the little dude with the boomerang. I forget his name. He bugged the living crap out of me. Like in every game, I played all 3 Final Fantasy 13 games, and he sucked in all of them. So there you go. Let's move on from that. One game which we were talking about earlier. Well, we make a list before we do all these shows, and of all the stuff that we're going to talk about. And one of the games I actually forgot to mention, which I am very excited for, is Rise of the Tomb Raider, because we finally got to see some gameplay for that game, and it looks fucking excellent. They showed off a whole sequence. This is the first time we've seen actual gameplay from the game. The previous trailer that was released was all CG. We get to see a sequence of Lara climbing a very, very inhospitable mountaintop, and it just looks to me like the actual the design of it and the attention to detail was really impressive. What were your thoughts on that?
It looked gorgeous, but all I could think about the entire time was, compared to the last game, how much more fucked up can we get Lara Croft in this game compared to the previous one? Yay!
I was like, I will say, like, the scene where she fell from the mountaintop and like her rope acted as a pendulum and smacked her into the wall. I'm just like, nope, she's dead.
Yeah, there was a lot of those kind of moments, but you know, it's a video game. They'll make these impossible jumps and survive these impossible situations. So, you know, it looks like a perfectly good game. Tomb Raider was never my sort of game, at least in terms of the reboot. But I'm excited for those who are looking forward to it. I mean, it looks like a damn well-polished game at the very least. So, you know, it looks good. Not my sort of thing, but I may pick it up for PS4 later if I hear it's good.
Yeah, well, that's obviously the sticking point with fans. That, like, and it's kind of crazy that in this day and age, when, you know, exclusives are very limited in this day and age. Exclusives are mostly limited to, you know, a particular type of DLC you'll be able to get if you get it for one console or the other, which is, you know, that kind of sucks, but that's, you know, just a situation that you're left in. Whereas this game, when it was announced this was going to be a timed exclusive for the Xbox One, engendered a surprising amount of hate from people, I thought, because, you know, they're exclusive still. You know, you can't get Halo on PS4, you can't get you know, Infamous 3 on Xbox, you know, you can't get Splatoon on anything else but the Wii U, so, you know, exclusives do still exist in this day and age, but for some reason when it was announced that Xbox had snagged the rights to a limited exclusivity deal with the developers, a lot of people just like threw up their hands and got angry and started mashing their fingers on the keyboard, spewing out hatred on the internet for this whole situation. Which kind of surprised me. What were your thoughts on that? Are you still kind of a bit, you know, are you miffed about that? Are you still miffed about that? What are your thoughts?
I'm kind of miffed about it, if only because it screams a little bit of desperation from Microsoft's point. They basically just threw money at Square and said, hey, make this for our console first. So, yeah, it just screams a bit of a desperation from Microsoft's point, considering, let's be honest here, they don't have the exclusives Nintendo has, by a long shot. They don't have the exclusives Sony has in terms of first-party development studios. Simply put, they just don't, at least compared to release schedule. So this just screams like a, hey, we need an exclusive to try and sell our system. Hey, Square, here's a popular game. Let's throw a ton of money at it and make it exclusive for a few months.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do own an Xbox One, but I'm actually very angry at it a lot of the time because it just does not perform as a console should, and I'm actually, like, I was actually one of the most, like, things I was most thrilled about was the fact that it's finally getting a dashboard update, which will be happening later this year, because the current dashboard is fucking awful. So I'm not really, yeah, and I will be buying a PS4 next month actually, for this, just so I can get in on the Street Fighter V beta, which they announced will be happening next month. So which is it's the whole reason I'm fucking buying a console is for that. But yeah, I'm not really a Microsoft fanboy, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, yeah, that's not really new. I mean, this has happened before. I mean, and you know, as I said, it doesn't happen so much for third-party developers giving it exclusively to one console. But, like, you know, you can go back, you know, not very far. You can look at Destiny, and Sony threw a crap ton of money at the developers there in order to make a particular type of DLC an exclusive for the PS4. And no one wants to shit about that.
I think the difference is that those games are still being released at the same time. You're not kind of depriving one group of people from the base experience. I don't think people care so much about DLC, considering DLC we know is going to make it to every console eventually. It's not like it's going to break the game, and there's no kind of cross-play to give advantage to one system's players over another. So it's just kind of a weird situation where it's just kind of an obvious cash grab at this point to try and make one system look better than the other by that console's manufacturer.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, going back to the game itself, yeah, as I said, I'm very excited for it. I'm very much looking forward to it. I hope they don't go quite down the road of the first game where they did have, like, Lara getting these horrible fucking injuries that would have no doubt killed her many times over, but somehow didn't. Largely because I think that the developers, yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm really glad the game did very well. It sold a lot of units, it's done more than well enough to obviously warrant a sequel and have that sequel given a certain amount of exclusivity. And Sorry, I got completely distracted by the fact that no one lost their shit when Capcom announced that that Street Fighter V was going to be a PS4 exclusive, but we can get back to that in a second. Yeah, I would very much hope that they don't go down that route again, because they said, like, oh, you know, in the first game we want people to want to care about Lara. We want them to be able to, you know, nurture her and help her grow into this strong warrior woman. And I'm like, okay, fine. If you want to have that as an origin story, I'm fine with that. But we've done that origin story now. We don't need to do it again.
Yeah, understandable. And I mean, a lot of kind of jokes were brought that their kind of their tagline at the end where they said, we're bringing the tombs back in Tomb Raider. It's like, well, I would hope so. That tombs are part of the title of your franchise. You better have them in there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and tombs would be great. I mean, there were some very limited tomb sections in the first Tomb Raider reboot, but yes, actual tombs would be very welcome at this stage. So yeah, that's that. So going back to what I was interrupted by, the thought of, no one lost their shit when Capcom announced that Street Fighter V was going to be exclusive for the PS4, and that's not a time exclusive. That's a permanent exclusive. You will never be able to get Street Fighter V on Xbox. Why do you think that is? That people are not upset about that, and they still are about Tomb Raider?
I think it's mostly due to the fact that Street Fighter is played a lot by not necessarily just Americans, but mostly by a lot of Japanese and Asian players as well. And let's be honest here, the Xbox does simply not sell outside of the Americas and a few European and Australian countries. So it's really just a means of bringing it to the market that they know is going to buy it versus, say, I don't want to say that no one on the Xbox is interested in Street Fighter V, but I think they realize that people who want to own Street Fighter V probably own a PS4 compared to the Xbox, at least in terms of the regions in which they're going to be selling it, but that's just my guess.
Well, I would challenge that statement slightly. I think the Xbox sells just fine everywhere but Japan. It's no secret that it sells like crap in Japan, there's no question about that. I don't know. Again, not really sure I agree with that either. On the grounds, like Street Fighter 4 runs the best on Xbox. It's the most stable on Xbox. There are issues with frame rate drops and overheating kind of issues on the PS3, and the netcode by far runs better on Xbox than anything else. So I think that, you know, it's a game which they don't. Yeah, if you want to say they haven't really devoted much attention to the Microsoft platform, I think that it runs better on that than any other platform, and I've had it on PC, Xbox, and PS3, so I'm not really sure there's a whole lot of weight to that argument. I think, you know, they've made no secret of the fact that it's exclusive because Sony just swept in and basically said, here's a pile of money, make it for us, which is no different to what you said happened with Crystal Dynamics and Tomb Raider, so I think that it's a valid comparison.
Oh, it definitely is. I'm not saying it's not, I'm just saying that I think the reasoning was a lot of Capcom's a Japanese company trying to sell a very kind of Japanese fighting game to that audience versus, say, Square Enix Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is more of a Western style game, especially considering the characters and the settings and so on and so forth. That I think it just has more to do with their decision to try and market to one specific way versus Tomb Raider, but ultimately it is a very valid comparison, and I think one that probably should be made for the betterment of better third-party support on both consoles.
All right, fair enough. Let's leave it at that. Moving into the end of the show, is there anything you want to discuss? We did kind of briefly mention that YouTube have announced they're going to have their own streaming service to rival Twitch, which is kind of funny since earlier in the year they actually passed on the opportunity to buy Twitch. Either they passed on it or it was snapped up by Amazon. I don't think we know for sure which way it is either way. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Please, for the love of God, let it be more stable than Twitch. Twitch has been utter shit for me the last 2 or 3 months, so I am not pleased with Twitch right now, so I would welcome a solid alternative at this point.
Whereas it's actually the opposite for me, because Twitch has been fine for me, but YouTube has been running like crap for me. People who watch this channel, obviously, who are watching this right now, would know that I've been having random problems with I can upload videos for months at a time and they work fine, and then for like a week or two, like most of my uploads will break and I have to delete them and re-upload them for no fucking reason. No one can tell me why, and I don't know anyone else who has the same problem, but it's really like there's a video uploading as we speak while we do this podcast. So yeah, I'm kind of not really thrilled with YouTube at the moment.
And that's completely understandable, so I guess we'll kind of have to just wait and see how it turns out at this point, considering we don't have very many details about the actual program.
No, we don't, and I mean, I think that just as an overall thought, I think that it's kind of like the streaming music scene at the moment, where a lot of people trying to get in on a market which is owned largely by services like Spotify and things like that, and I think it'll be very difficult for YouTube to get into it for the same reason they're having trouble with that, because like different streaming services are trying to get into a market which is owned by one major player or one or two major players at the moment, and what can they offer aside from being able to do exactly the same thing? Really, there's only going to be very minor differences between each service, perhaps in terms of price or in terms of song availability and things like that. And I think it's going to be very much the same thing for YouTube, because Twitch owns the gaming streaming market now, and like they own it solely and wholly. So for YouTube to try and break into that is going to be very difficult for them, I think, unless they can offer a service which is either vastly superior or is, just overall in terms of quality, or has something else to offer that Twitch does not at the moment.
Yeah, that's completely understandable, but I think people are kind of, I don't want to say they're tired of Twitch, but I've been hearing a lot of problems from other people. So that's just kind of me. I think people are ready for an alternative to at least try and say, okay, let's try this out, let's see if it's any better, and if it does, we'll make the switch, versus kind of being stranglehold by the one player the entire time.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, well, you can look at the comparison of of digital platforms on PC. I mean, again, that's like Steam owns gaming on PC, and a lot of people tried to break into that with services like Origin, and things like that, and have not been successful. So I guess time will tell to see what they can actually do in terms of that.
Yeah, time will tell. I'm just interested to see how it turns out, how solid it'll be compared to Twitch, considering that's been utter ass on my end, but that's personally just me.
Fair enough. All right, any other games or anything else you want to talk about that's happened over the week that we haven't discussed yet?
Not really, nothing major, and if we can always do some cleanup next week if we need to.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, we've been going for an hour. I think that's like a record for the old Copon Enabled. So hope you guys enjoyed the extra value that we had brought in this post E3 discussion. Mr. Nairman, where can people find you if they're looking for you on the interwebs? You
can find me at Twitter at NairmanBSC, or you can find me at my YouTube channel, BrainscratchComms.
Excellente. Well, thank you very much, you guys, for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please leave a comment and let us know what you thought about our thoughts here on everything that happened at E3, or anything that you would like us to cover future episodes, or things that we just plain old missed out on. Until then, have a great time, guys, and we will see you very soon.